Hello and welcome back to our podcast, You're Better Than That, hosted by me, Hannah Miller, and my friend Zoe. Hello, Zoe.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
How's your week been?
It's been nice. It's been a good week. Sam is back from Singapore, so the house has got a little bit of equilibrium. We're in the middle of A-levels at the time of recording, so that's a big deal. Having that going on in the background, you can feel that level of sort of stress that's going on. My second son, who's doing his A-levels, is not so much of a planner. He likes to do things last minute. He's actually very calm. He's a calm individual. He doesn't get mega stressed, but we are in the pressure zone.
In the thick of it.
We're in the thick of it. The workload is high at the moment and we've ticked 2 exams off the list.
Yes.
So it's really good. I cannot wait to be the other side for all of us. I really can't.
I'd love to know, before we go into the episode, I'd love to know if you have any nuggets or like something that you've learned in this last week that stood out to you.
Well, on the subject of A-levels, start there. There's 2 things, but one's a lovely thing and one's just an A-levels thing. I think one of the things I'm recognising in me in this A-level period is that these are not my A-levels. And I'm being reminded again that they're not my A-levels, they're not my results, it's not my life, and it's not mine to control. It's mine to steer and support and help him do and be the best. But finding that balance as a parent is never easy with any child in any season, but they are not a reflection of me. And if he does really well, it's not a reflection of me. If he doesn't do so well, it's not a reflection of me. Obviously, as a parent, we are involved in our children's growth and who they become and their attitude to work and life and so on and so forth. But I recognise and have increasingly recognised that I have previously put so much emphasis on anything that works out is because of me or doesn't work out is because of me. And actually, children, even little children, but grown-up children are free agents with their own agency. Yeah. And there's a piece that's coming for me in remembering that these are not my results and it's not my life and they're his choices and they're his outcomes. And I think this is a wider point, but I think as a parent, you never want your children to go through a hard time of any kind. If you do, that would be weird. But you and I both know that things don't always go our way. And actually, we learn a lot in those seasons. We probably learn more. So I guess the thing I am working out and walking out at the moment is that these are not my results, my exams. It's mine to look after him, to be present, to support him, to do what he needs me to do. But to get that balance right is something I'm really working on.
That's a great reflection.
That wasn't even what I was thinking about.
You could do a whole podcast episode.
We could do a whole podcast on that. I think maybe we should, because actually we could put that down in the thoughts. You know, it is a constant set of letting goes with being a parent. And my son is 18 years old and I can't chain him to the desk and make him work if he doesn't want to. And neither should I. You know, he's got to find his own motivations. My job is to help him see the good in who he is and what he's capable of and to try and go after that. The other thing that's caught my attention this week in a lighter note is I love sport. I realise, actually, I like it more than I realised I did. I don't know whether that's my dad. He always has loved sport. He's played sport all my life. I don't know whether it's having an older brother that liked a lot of football, being married to someone who loves sport and having 3 sons who love sport. I am around a lot of sport. And although I sometimes moan about like being a rugby mum and the amount of hours it takes, I do love going to watch them play. Don't love training so much, but I like watching a game. I like them to win and I like to watch it happen. And I love tennis. So that's one of the things I really love. And this week I saw on social media that Louis Vuitton are doing a campaign where they've done these lovely little short interview snippets with Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer. Federer? Who's that? Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal are together in the snow recording this series of shorts around what it is to be kind of, it's about core values actually, and about them being sort of like life legends of the sport. But I just loved it. If you get a chance to find it or go find it on YouTube, I really recommend going to find it because they are such wholesome, cute content.
We'll link it in our weekly email.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We can show people where to find it. And what I love about it is that obviously they have been rivals for years, but they recognise that their rivalry has enabled each of them to be better, and it's been a really healthy rivalry, which hasn't been about the icky kind of comparison that draws us to behave in a way that we don't want to. So there's really sweet little bits in there, and they're in the snow, and obviously Rafa's from Spain and isn't used to snow, and yeah, you can go Google it, but like I said, we can put a link into it. But it kind of leads into the subject for today, which is about comparison.
Yes.
So although that's a very sweet example, comparison is a massive topic that we could probably do many an episode on, but we're going to touch into it today.
Yes.
The whole issue around comparison, why we compare, how do we do it well, is it a modern phenomenon, what is comparison?
And also, I think comparison gets a bad rap. Like, if it's done healthily, it can be really good, and it can be
Totally
a good
agree.
tool. But I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. Why don't we start with that? Because actually, we do always talk about comparison in a negative sense, but why don't we start with the positive, actually? It is a human issue. So there's been so much sort of social psychology done around comparison, because comparison theory is something that is part of psychology. There's a guy called Festinger who did loads of work on it. But actually, comparing is a human issue, and it's not all bad. It actually helps us to be motivated. And we do it because it reduces uncertainty. So if you think about what we do as children, as teenagers, as young adults, as old people, in new settings, new surroundings, we are looking to the left and the right to see what people do. It's how we learn how we should be in an environment. So if I walk into a new workplace, it's quite reasonable to be looking at what people are doing, how they dress, how they interact, what the norms are around here, so that I don't do something that causes me to totally cock up. And children do it. So children go into a school and they're looking to the left and the right, and they think, how do we play? How do we share? And those kind of social norms and what other people are doing help us see whether we're on the right track or not. Right. And actually, it is a defining characteristic of our species and our behaviour to compare. It's why we don't do the wrong thing at the office party, or we learn to do better in a sport or an activity, because we're comparing and we are measuring. So the concept of comparison is in and of itself a human issue that we do. So the goal isn't to never compare. And I think that's quite helpful for us to kind of remember. The goal isn't to be like, I've never compared myself, I never look to the left or the right. The issue with comparison is, why are we doing it, and what is the outcome of it for us?
And where do you think it has gone wrong? Like, what if it can be used for a tool that's helpful and healthy, where do you think it has lost its way?
I mean, I think that's a really good question, Zoe, about where has it gone wrong? Because it has gone wrong. And actually, people are left feeling awful when they've compared themselves. So if I'm saying it's a human issue and it's part of what we're designed to do, something's gone wrong. I've got some data here. 93% of people indicated in this survey they felt pressure to compare themselves. 44% of respondents feel the most pressure is when it comes to body image. And then another 35% felt the most pressure came to comparing their wealth to other people. And then they were left feeling jealous, unsatisfied, and 96% of people were emotionally impacted in some way from doing it. So it has gone wrong. And I think my reflection on that is, it's the why am I comparing, and what am I looking to have as an outcome from the comparison exercise? So let's give an example. If I'm comparing myself to a business like mine, or a friend of mine, or a stranger on the internet, and my goal is to feel better or to be better than them, if my goal is that I win in the comparison exercise, then I will feel momentarily better. However, I am trying to feel better on a very insecure foundation. So I'm going to be left in the long run feeling icky and insecure, because at any given day where I felt better, and on any other given day, I will come off losing. So if I'm comparing my body to a stranger on the internet, if I'm comparing the size of my extension to a friend, if I'm looking at my client list and comparing that to somebody else's client list, if I'm wondering if somebody's got a nicer car than I have, or a better house, or going on a nicer holiday, etc. Comparing their friendships, comparing whether their parents are more present or not, or any kind of comparison that we can go. If I am trying to be better, and I know I'm looking to be better than them, I know that I'm on to a loser, and that was a really bad decision of mine to be engaging in it, because I know I'm going to end up feeling icky, because it's not a nice way to go about living your life. I don't think there's anybody who could argue that trying to be better than somebody else and getting your security from that is going to leave you feeling good in the long run, because all of those things I've just mentioned, somebody's going to do better than you.
And that's the thing. There's always going to be people ahead. There's always going to be people who may be a couple of steps behind.
Exactly. It's madness.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told this story before, but my next door neighbour, we live in a semi-detached house. And when we bought this house that we're sitting in, it was an old lady's house, and it needed a huge amount of work doing it, immense amount of work. And we had a really small budget. But we did an extension to the back of the house, and we knocked some walls through and blah, blah, blah. Several years later, our next door neighbours then did an extension. And they had permission to go further than us, because we'd done an extension, which meant that they could make theirs bigger. And it was only when, this is honestly, I had never thought anything about the size of my extension. It was only when their extension went up, which was a direct comparison to mine, that I thought, oh, perhaps ours isn't big enough. I had never, ever thought about that. And then I kind of luckily had a bit of a, what are you even thinking this for? And I was able to talk some sense into myself. But I'd never thought, oh, I wish our extension was bigger. So that shows that when a direct comparison is put in front of us and we come up feeling lacking, then we suddenly become aware of a lack that doesn't even really exist and didn't even exist in our mind until we could see it.
Right. So we've just talked about comparison being healthy, which is the ideal, but a lot of us struggle with comparison in some shape or form. What do we do to get into the space where comparison becomes a good tool for us?
Yeah. Well, okay. And I think the other thing I haven't talked about is when we're comparing to others and coming off worse. So there's one thing going out there, and my motivation is to be, or to compare myself and be doing better. A lot of the time we find ourselves comparing to people and we just feel like we're coming off worse. So that's the other side of this, which is challenging. We just don't we know we haven't got as nice a house. We aren't as an amazing relationship. We don't have as nice clothes. We don't go on as nice holidays. Our client list isn't as big. And like you say, Zoe, however well you're doing, somebody's doing better. So wherever you are trying to clutch that security from, you are going to come off worse. And that's also going to leave you feeling icky. And for it to be something that's okay for us, we've got to get to the root of what's going on when we feel good or bad or icky, to use that language. For me, that is exactly the word I feel. I feel uncomfortable with myself that I've engaged in this whole process. And I think one of the learnings for me has been that I have to understand what it is I'm looking for and what the route is in order to get a different route. And often when it's not going well for me and I've been in a comparative exercise for the good, the bad or the worse, the problem is it's driven by this concept of scarcity that Brené Brown talks about a lot, and other people. And scarcity is essentially the lie that there isn't enough to go around. And so therefore, you having that means I can't have that. Or you being better at that means I have to be worse. Not that you can have that and I can have my life, which is just an incomparable life, actually. And that concept of scarcity definitely is something that I have to watch. And I'm sure loads of people listening to this have to watch. I actually think, if I can be totally honest, I grew up in a home where some of the messaging was, there isn't enough to go around. And if that person's doing well, then it probably won't work out for you. And that measure and comparison has sewn into sometimes the way I see things that I have to actively resist. Back to your question, which is how can we make it something healthy? I think it's knowing that root. What is it for you? That's the root behind what are you doing? Are you trying to find security from this exercise? Because if you are, you're onto a loser. What is it you're trying to do? And then secondly, I think it's about deciding to take to have an act of resistance. What's your act of resistance against this going to be? So is it that you are going to start being grateful for everything you have? Is it that you can just say, I'm so pleased for them, and like say the thing that you don't even mean till you mean it? Yeah. If you don't feel pleased for them, say it till you mean it. Like, I think that's the right thing to do. Say it till you are pleased for them. And just choosing to recognize that our lives are incomparable. You know, if you're listening to this, you are incomparable to anybody. There is nobody who can live out your life, your trajectory, the great things you have, the challenges that you have. Nobody has your gifts and talents. Nobody has the joy of living out your life with its challenges and its wonderful joys. And the same goes for me and for you, Zoe. Nobody will ever be you ever again and ever live your life. And if I stop and think about that, the futility of comparing myself to somebody else's house or somebody else's car or somebody else's experiences or successes or relationships or family of origin or whatever else it might be, is just it's mind-blowingly silly waste of my time and energy.
I feel like I love the concept that you're talking about, of that there's enough to go around.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the key for it, because ultimately comparison is I want, when it's in the negative way, I want what that person's has because I can't have it for
That's
me.
right.
And so I think you're so right. It's then shifting into there's enough for everyone to go around. Everyone's a winner. We can all win.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we do is we elevate and we increase what we see is good in other people's lives, and we see often what somebody has that we don't have. So I'll give you an example of something that I've felt. I have felt sometimes I've compared in the current life stage I'm in. I've looked at people whose parents are in a more healthy, they're healthier than mine are, as in maybe they're younger. My mum has Parkinson's disease, which means that there are things she can't do that she was able to do once upon a time. And I've looked at other people in my life stage and I've thought, well, you can do what you do because you've got this support system around you and I don't. So that's one, that sounds like a rather unimportant comparison, but actually what that then sows into is it's not good enough for you, you don't have, so therefore you can't, you won't be able to function like they can because you don't have that. And what I'm forgetting is, well, actually, I had many years of a mum who lived in my locality and she was healthy and very much involved in my children's lives. And there are other people whose parents might live on the other side of the globe, or their parents may have passed away, and so on and so forth. So when we're constantly doing this kind of comparative exercise, like you say, because of this sense of I don't have what you have and there isn't enough to go around, we are missing out on all the wonderful things we actually have. We are forgetting to be grateful for the many wonderful things that we have. And even in really hard seasons, which I've had, there are things to be grateful for. There are things that are good in our lives. And I'm actually not talking about the really difficult times when we need to engage in grief and we need to engage in letting go. I'm talking about the run-of-the-mill, day-to-day, looking at what people have and finding our sense of identity and security through a comparative exercise. And, you know, people do it when their children are little. If you might be listening to this, you've got little ones. You're comparing how quickly does my child speak to somebody else's child speak, to whether does my child walk quicker than somebody else's? Is my child smilier? Does my child sleep through the night? Compare, lack. And all you do, even if you win some of those comparisons, you're going to lose some other ones. Just learning not to do that. will give you so much more peace of mind and contentment, and to be grateful and generous and to let it go, which is why sometimes I think we have to make actual choices. We have to make choices where we say, what am I going to engage with healthily, and what am I not going to engage with? Where am I just not going to play this game? I'm aware of time, and I'm aware that I could talk about this forever, and we probably need to revisit it. We could probably do a whole episode on comparison as a parent and comparison as a leader, a comparison as a woman. We could probably do all of those things. But I think a few thoughts that I would like to leave you with today are, these are some questions that you can run through when you can tell what you're doing. So I think one of the things I'd say is to think about, when we're about to engage in this kind of behavior, one of the first things to do is ask yourself, what is it I am trying to gain? What is it that I want to have as an outcome because I'm comparing myself to a friend, to a stranger, to a situation? And is it helpful that that's what I'm looking for? Is it good for me? Is it good for my soul? Is it good for my mind? Is it good for my state of being, that that's what I'm looking for? And if the answer is no, step away, make a different choice. What is going on for me in this moment? What's the lack that I'm feeling that means I'm now trying to compare myself to somebody and come off better than them? So either of those things, what is it that's going on for me that is searching for meaning through comparison in an unhealthy way? And then if I'm then comparing myself to somebody, or I find myself online looking at photographs or seeing people's highlight reel, all of that stuff that we see, is it true? Is what I'm seeing true? You and I could both tell stories, I'm sure, of people whose lives we've seen looking great, and actually it wasn't anywhere near as great as they were making out. Yeah. I remember being a little girl, and one of my first best friends, I was really quite jealous of her family unit, and I thought they had everything. Their mum and dad were in this amazing space, and their family was really well operating. And, the reality was very, very different to what I thought. I'm not going to say any more than that, but I remember becoming aware that it was nothing like what I thought. So I think sometimes we aren't even comparing with reality. Yeah. We aren't comparing with reality. So is it true? Is it real? And then if I'm engaging in this thing, or I find myself just having a comparison thought because something good has happened for someone else and my emotions have gone to lack, what can I do? What's the act of resistance that I can choose to engage with that actually brings me back to a place of equilibrium? That could be gratitude for my life. That could be praise and encouragement for the person that is experiencing that good thing. And that could be me just choosing a different narrative, reminding myself there is enough to go round, there is enough for you, there is enough for me. You can have this can be going on for you, and it can also go on for me. Those are some of my thoughts. And by the way, while we're talking about praise, I just want to say, if you are enjoying this podcast, we would love it if you would take 1 minute to give us a review. We would love some reviews. Reviews matter. Like, reviews do make a difference, don't they, to how other people see the podcast. So if you've been enjoying it, and we know people are because we get a lot of messages, thank you for them, by the way. It matters. It really matters to us. Please, would you pop on Apple or pop on Spotify, give us a review. Even if you just click on the star bar and just say how many stars you'd give us, that would be massively appreciated by us. Thank you so much.